November 7, 1957. The night air in Plainfield, Wisconsin, carried a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn wind. It carried the scent of horror that would soon seep into the darkest corners of American folklore. When a local sheriff's deputy arrived at the dilapidated farmhouse on the hill, he could never have imagined that within its walls a macabre workshop of flesh and bone awaited discovery. A workshop where a dead woman would become a bed, a lampshade, a pair of shoes. The name of the man who built that workshop would become synonymous with the grotesque. Gein, Edward Theodore Gein, a name that would echo through horror cinema for generations to come. Born on August 27, 1906, in a modest log cabin near the farming community of La Crosse County, Edward grew up under the shadow of a mother, Augusta, whose rigid Puritanism turned love into punishment. Augusta preached a strict doctrine that all women were sinful, all men were wicked, and the outside world was a place of moral decay. She raised her children in a self-imposed isolation, forbidding them to attend school, discouraging friendships, and condemning the simple pleasures of life as temptations of the devil. When Augusta fell ill with cancer in the early 1940s, the family collapsed under the weight of grief. The matriarch died in 1945, leaving Ed, his younger brother Henry, and his sister Mary to fend for themselves in a world that they had never been allowed to truly experience. Edward's relationship with his mother was a twisted blend of devotion and dependency. After Augusta's death, the family home became a mausoleum of memories, and the empty rooms echoed with her disapproving voice. To cope, Ed turned to the one thing he could control: the land. He harvested the fields, tended the livestock, and kept to himself, living as a reclusive caretaker of the property his mother had built. His isolation grew deeper after his brother, an aspiring photographer, died in a car crash in 1945, and his sister, a former schoolteacher, slipped into a nervous breakdown that would claim her life in a mental institution. By 1954, Ed was the sole occupant of the farmhouse, a solitary figure surrounded by the ghosts of his family. The first crack in Ed Gein's quiet existence appeared in the form of a missing woman named Bernice Worden, the widowed owner of the local hardware store. On the afternoon of September 16, 1957, Bernice vanished without a trace. The small town of Plainfield swarmed with speculation, but it was a chance conversation between a police officer and a neighboring farmer that would shatter the complacency of the community. The farmer reported seeing a truck, marked with a distinctive number plate, parked at the back of the Gein property, a truck that had been used earlier that day to deliver a load of pork ribs. The officer, driven by a hunch, decided to investigate the Gein farm. When Sheriff H.W. Morin and his deputy entered the property, they found the front door ajar and a strong odor of decay wafting from the interior. Inside, the farmhouse seemed ordinary at a glance: cracked wallpaper, a modest kitchen, a cold stone hearth. But a closer look revealed a hidden horror. In the attic, the deputies uncovered a series of makeshift shelves, jars filled with preserved human organs, and a collection of objects that defied rational explanation. A set of human skin sewn together to form a dress, a lamp made from a human skull, a pair of shoes composed of a dismembered foot, a rocking chair upholstered with human flesh. Among the most chilling artifacts lay a bed, its mattress wrapped in a blanket fashioned from a human torso. The evidence pointed unambiguously to Edward Gein. A thorough search of the property yielded more than 24 human bodies, many of them identified as missing women from the area, including Bernice Worden herself. The police discovered that Gein had exhumed bodies from local cemeteries, particularly the local Catholic cemetery, a fact that would later become a staple in horror mythos: the grave-robbing necrophile. In total, at least 13 bodies were linked to his crimes, though the full extent of his work could never be fully documented. Edward Gein was arrested on November 12, 1957, after a frantic, fruitless search for a missing housewife, Mary Hogan, led detectives straight to his doorstep. The once quiet man who had spent his life listening to his mother's admonitions was now the subject of a national frenzy. The courtroom was packed, the press frenzy unrelenting, and the nation listened as the details unfolded. At his arraignment, Gein pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, a defense that would dominate the proceedings for months. The trial, which began in the spring of 1958, was a macabre spectacle. Prosecutors presented the gruesome evidence: the human skin garments, the skeletonized bodies, the human skin mask that had allegedly been used to impersonate a female at a funeral to claim a body for dismemberment. Psychiatrists evaluated Gein, diagnosing him with severe psychotic disorders, including a split personality that seemed to channel his mother's voice. The judge, aware of the public's morbid fascination, ordered that many of the most graphic items be described in restrained terms, but even the sanitized testimony sent chills through the courtroom. On the final day of the trial, the jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning a verdict: not guilty by reason of insanity. Subscribe to the Autopsy Files for more stories like this.